Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Science Forum. Today is on July 23rd, Tuesday, and welcome my dear friend Tom.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Tom. So nice to see you here. Time flies, and then this is a very unique week. That's something we need to talk about that. So one is about the hearing from yesterday. But we just got a news about 30 minutes ago that the director of the Secret Service just resigned. But still, her hearing yesterday at Congress is like a crazy event to maybe anybody. And she refused to answer most of the questions. And also, it's still there are so many questions are remain a huge um just people don't know what's going on and even
Hmm.
don't know if the FBI or the Secret Service are involved in this assassination attempt. So this is a big question remain. We're going to discuss with Tom. And the second question is, where is Biden right now? There is raising so big questions. People are just asking on the social media, where is Biden? We haven't seen him for 5 days since he just said he would gonna step down, which is a big issue, and we did not see him. So some people said he's dying, or some people even said he's dead already. But where is he? It's a big question. So these are the two things topic we need to discuss today. And Tom, what do you think about the hearing from yesterday?
I think that what was amazing to me is it's very rare to have Democrats and Republicans together
Uh-huh.
going after somebody. Usually, one party or the other goes after the person testifying, and then the other party defends them. Oh, no, and in this case, you pretty much had almost everybody on the committee, Republicans, Democrats, both ask very hard questions, be very critical of the Secret Service, and in many cases call for her to resign.
Mhm. So why do you think this has happened? That the two parties seems like they're get together to to do one thing. It's about to have her resign, ask
Well,
her to.
first of all, under our system, in November, every member of the House of Representatives runs for reelection. They have to run every 2 years, senators every 6 years. So only one third of the Senate is
Mhm.
turned over during every national election. But members of Congress, the House of Representatives, every one of them has to run. And
Mhm.
they were looking at the polls saying that the so called down ballot candidates were
Mhm.
suffering because of Biden. Down ballot means if people don't vote for the president, and a lot of people that do, are going to cast a vote Democratic Party, Republican Party. But if they don't vote for Biden, a number of people down ballot, as they call it, running for the House of Representatives, running for Senate, running for dog catcher, doesn't matter. If they're on the Democratic ticket and the Democrats don't get a vote because they don't want to vote for Biden, that hurts every one of them. So, first and foremost, their loyalty goes out the window when they're worried about their own political survival. And that was the reason that you saw Democrat after Democrat. Most of those Democrats that you saw criticize her and the administration, you never heard of many of them. Many of them are unknown. So they're relying on people to go into the polls and vote Democratic, vote for the president and everybody under him. And
Mm.
so they're in a position, nobody's going to go to the polls except maybe their own family members to vote for them. So they're going to either benefit or suffer from the people going in to vote for or against the person at the head of their ticket, which is the president in this case,
Mhm.
head of the Democratic Party.
So it seems like these congressmen and women try to make clear that I'm not one of them. I'm different, and even though you don't vote for Biden, you vote for me.
Yeah.
It's a show for them
Right.
to show their voters that still, please vote for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So how? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder that Kimberly just resigned. What do you think about the resign? Or is the resign good enough? Or we need more investigation on her?
Well, the
Even,
problem, what a lot of people don't realize is by law, the
Mhm,
Secret Service is responsible for protecting a number of people, starting with the president. In the US government, the president, the vice president,
mhm,
members of Congress, federal officer, any number of things that the Secret Service is responsible for US officials, and they're responsible for any head of state that visits the United States. In
mhm,
this case, you have Netanyahu coming to address Congress this week. Secret Service is supposed to protect him or
mhm,
any other prime minister or king or anyone else that runs another government. Now, everybody below Netanyahu that's below prime minister level, whether it's the secretary of their defense department or any number of departments, they're the responsibility of diplomatic security, which is a police agency under the management of State Department. And diplomatic security runs security for every U.S. property outside the U.S. except for military properties. So every embassy, every consulate, uh, every other center, hundreds actually, more than the 200 embassies and a couple hundred more consulates. So they have a tremendous responsibility. It's actually diplomatic security is the largest of the federal law enforcement agencies. They have in the area of 50,000 sworn officers that are special agents of diplomatic security, which is a police title much like FBI or Homeland Security or DEA or some of the other ones. So diplomatic security has that responsibility. And in this case, when Netanyahu comes to the US, whoever else he brings with him, Minister of Defense or Minister of their equivalent of Foreign Affairs or whatever, they come under the responsibility of diplomatic security. Now, diplomatic security has somewhere over 50,000 officers worldwide to protect all of these properties.
mhm,
Then locally, FBI has maybe 12,000.
mhm.
Secret Service has what, 3 or 4,000. So none of the other federal law enforcement agencies are anywhere close. Diplomatic security is the largest.
Mhm.
So the next thing that people may not know is that Secret Service or diplomatic security that are responsible to protect this wide range of officials, if there's still an attack on one of those officials or they actually get murdered, the investigative responsibility goes to the FBI. So in this case, you have Kimberly Cheadle go to testify yesterday and not be able to answer most of the questions, which normally she would not, because the FBI is actually conducting the investigation. And as we have seen time and time again, the FBI won't share the results. They won't talk about it. They use the excuse, I think, way too often. Oh, Christopher Wright, we can't talk about that pending investigation. We can't talk about, and then these investigations are pending for years. So in this case, when are we going to hear the results, or at least preliminary results, or daily results of the FBI investigation into the attempted assassination of Donald Trump? We haven't heard much of anything out of them so far.
Well, so thank you so much for introducing us some the system of the security. There are so many different branches that we can see. And I have a question regarding one a little detail from yesterday. And we know that the same day President Trump and Joe Biden has a rally, and Joe Biden has the similar rally very close to where Trump rally is, and they have 12 agents to go there to protect Joe Biden, and only have three for President Trump. Is that reasonable, or is this obviously a mistake?
I don't know if it's a mistake or just deliberate bias on the part of the Secret Service,
Mhm.
and Secret Service is under the management of Homeland Security. Mayorkas, our beloved leader that controls our southern border or doesn't control it,
Mhm.
he's actually in charge of the Secret Service. After the reorganization following 9/11, when
Okay.
Homeland Security was created, they moved. Secret Service used to be part of the Treasury Department because
Trash.
one of their responsibilities for decades was to investigate counterfeit money, counterfeit currency, or financial crimes. They've
Okay.
been trying for years to expand their jurisdiction to a wider range of financial crimes because every one of those crimes is also under the investigative responsibility of the FBI. So, Secret Service is trying to, basically prove that they're in it with the big guys and they're a legitimate law enforcement agency and all of that. So, for the last 150 years or so, they added the responsibility to Secret Service of protecting the president, and then they designated a wider range of people for them to protect. Now,
Mhm.
there was always a little bit of confusion about who else was protected, or if something happened to the protected person, then what? Now,
Mhm.
you may recall from the history books that when John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, November 22nd, 1963, it was not a federal crime. So the Secret Service basically did not allow the city of Dallas to conduct the autopsy or to conduct any follow up investigation. They basically kidnapped Kennedy's body out of Parkland Hospital onto Air Force One, flew him back to Washington. And realistically, they had no jurisdiction to do it. There were reports that they threatened doctors in the hallway at Parkland at gunpoint. We're taking his body, get out of our way. And
Really?
they forcibly took Kennedy's body out of the hospital, put it on the airplane to fly back to DC, and then when it landed, take his body to the Bethesda Medical Center, which is
Mhm.
at the northern edge of Washington, DC, where naval doctors would then conduct the autopsy and the follow-up physical investigation of Kennedy's body. And there have been so many discrepancies about who conducted the autopsy, how it was conducted, missing things. Kennedy's brain supposedly is still missing. Nobody knows where that went. All of these issues came up about that autopsy, and that the doctors that did it weren't really qualified. They had never really done a full bore autopsy of a murder victim or a shooting victim. Whereas the city police of Dallas would have, how many doctors would have a lot of experience doing that type of physical examination of a body, of a victim. So those discrepancies went back. Now, what people don't know, by the way, the Secret Service in those days did not have the greatest reputation. They often had reputations of the night before they had to do a major protection, being out drinking and partying and doing all of that. And those allegations were made following the Kennedy assassination, that they were in Fort Worth, Texas, until about 5 in the morning drinking, and then show up in Dallas. In some cases, some people claim maybe they were hungover or still drunk or something. And
Mhm.
so prior to the Kennedy assassination, Robert F. Kennedy, Attorney General of the United States at the time, introduced legislation to take away the protection responsibility from Secret Service and give it to the FBI.
Oh.
Now, Secret Service had their own lobbyists and their own people backing them up. So that was denied. And Secret Service kept responsibility for the protection under their jurisdiction. But there was nothing after the jurisdiction of who would run the investigation if and when the president was harmed, attacked, or dead. And
Mhm.
that's what happened. So you had Dallas police and Dallas county officials saying, wait a minute, the murders in Dallas, it should be a Dallas investigation. You had the
Mhm.
Secret Service saying, get lost. We're taking the body to Washington. And then there was a discrepancy. Who's going to actually take over? Is the
Mhm.
Secret Service going to run the investigation? bring in the FBI to help them, whatever. And then you have President Johnson create the Warren Commission for the purpose of concluding before the investigation that Oswald was the lone shooter, to put that to rest. So now, all of these years later, you have, the last almost successful attempt on a president, going back to Reagan, back in the Ford Reagan days, attacks, especially on Reagan. He ends up in the hospital and very severely ill, more so than anybody realized at the time. That he had a wound in his torso close to his heart and all of that, but he survived it and went on to continue his presidency. We haven't had an attack on a president really since then, anywhere near successful, shooting at him, getting away with that. We've had a couple of threats and minor things, but nothing along those lines. So now President Trump, over the last couple of almost years, the word is somebody, they did the rumor, Iran wants to kill Trump. Get even with Soleimani, who Trump had killed years ago, like the leading terrorist of Iran. But the real concern that a lot of pundits have said is that the Democratic Party has been so adamant, we cannot let Trump get back in the White House, whatever it takes. So they started out with, well, we'll keep him off the ballot, so we won't get enough, nominations or delegates. That goes to the Supreme Court. That gets thrown out. Well, then we'll bring all these charges on all these cases that were doctored and gerrymandered to make federal cases into local, like the New York case against him, or put on biased judges that make all these rulings that are ridiculous. And then you have the Supreme Court a couple of weeks ago rule that Jack Smith, and this is because several former attorney generals filed briefs with the Supreme Court saying, wait a minute, Jack Smith is not a legitimate special prosecutor. Merrick Garland pulled him out of thin air, and he'd never been vetted or nominated or go through the process. Now, the idea is, compared to Special Prosecutor Hur in the Biden documents case, well, Hur was already a U.S. attorney. So that means his name would already be in front of the Judiciary Committee. They would have had hearings. Then it would go to the main Senate, and the Senate could confirm that person as an attorney general or a senior DOJ official. In the case of Jack Smith, none of that happened. Merrick Garland just said, he's a special prosecutor. That's it. That's too bad. And the Supreme Court basically said, no, he didn't go through the process as indicated in the Constitution or in the amendments to the Constitution. He didn't go through any of that. And therefore, the attorney general just can't appoint somebody off the street and say, okay, you're the special prosecutor. You're in charge of this. And so the documents case based in Mar-a-Lago, that part's thrown out. So here the Democrats had such reliance. They're going to get Trump on this case. They're going to get Trump on that case. Well, that case has gone down the drain. The case in Fulton County, Georgia, is still, there's so many motions in that case that won't be resolved in time for the election. And how many times have I talked about in previous podcasts together that the Democrats screwed themselves? They waited till the last minute to bring all these. They could have brought some of these cases 3 years ago. And then the Constitution, the motions and the motions to suppress and discovery, all of those things would have been adjudicated already. But no, they wanted to wait on purpose to the last minute to interfere with the election, deliberately interfere with the upcoming election. And it's backfired. They either cannot get the prosecution conducted, or they can. In the one case that's still the convictions of Donald Trump in the case, in the one case, Erdogan case, that'll all be thrown out. So many aspects of that case were unconstitutional or violations of court procedures, established procedures, rules, regulations on how to conduct a prosecution like that. So every expert has said, oh, that case is going to be thrown away. Well, meantime, it's still standing. And it gave the Democrats, Trump's a convicted felon, whatever else he's no good because he's a felon. And
Mhm.
that's where, when Biden used that in the debate, Trump said, so's your son, referring to Hunter Biden, is now a convicted felon. So that's the one case that has not been completely thrown out yet,
Mhm.
but is expected to be thrown out.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens with that.
So I think more and more people will agree that Democrats try everything to destroy Trump, to stop him from winning at the election, but they failed. So they have no.
It's not just to stop him from winning. It's to stop him, and as they've referred to it, stop him at all costs from
Mhm.
returning to the White House.
Mhm.
So that means, yeah, stop him from winning.
Mhm.
But what if he does win? They don't want him back in the White House. And many advisors, analysts, pundits for a long time, including me, said the last resort for the deep state, for the Democrats to keep Trump out of the White House is to assassinate him.
Right.
That's the only true way,
Mhm.
because he's beaten them at every level for how long now? The court cases, the motions, the special prosecutors, all of those issues have gone to Trump's favor,
Mhm.
and that's almost only left a last resort. Do not let him live long enough to be president again. And that's what we're seeing in motion. And my fear of this is, whether it's Kimberly Cheadle running the Secret Service or whoever it is, that the deep state is going to continue to attempt to assassinate Trump every day. Not every day shoot at him, but every day plan to try to kill him.
Yeah, they won't stop.
They won't stop between now and the election.
Mhm.
If he gets elected, they won't stop from election day to inauguration day in January.
Mhm.
So that's what's going to happen. If he gets past inauguration and actually is put in office, well, they'll still take him out. They'll use whatever. They've been taking him out, trying to take him out by law, by election, by whatever, since he was elected in 2016.
Mhm.
So far, Russia Gate, all of these different plots
Mhm.
that have not only been implemented by the Democrats, by Hillary Clinton, with
Mhm.
the help of the FBI, which makes me ashamed that the FBI has gotten to this level. Now, back to the hearings yesterday, Cheadle now is no longer head of the Secret Service. And so she can claim now she's no longer privy to secret briefings, classified briefings, or whatever from the FBI that's running the actual investigation. Secret Service would still conduct its internal investigation. Who was the on-scene commander? How many people did they have there? All of the internal decision making, which is going to be investigated not just by Secret Service, but again by the FBI. Now, the problem is, how much confidence do any of us have that the FBI will conduct a thorough, diligent, honest investigation and then tell us about it if they do?
Right.
And so we're going to, if they get Christopher Wray to come testify under oath, his answers are going to be the same as they always are. Well, I can't talk about that. That's under investigation. I
Mhm.
can't talk about this. I can't talk about that. He'll
Right.
give no straight answers whatsoever
Mhm.
to any of the issues that are being discussed now and have been discussed since the shooting itself.
Right.
So therefore, we have no confidence in Cheadle. How much confidence, who she was under Mayorkas,
Mhm.
Homeland Security Secretary.
Mhm.
Christopher Wray is under Merrick Garland. So how much confidence do we have in Christopher Wray, Merrick Garland, and Joe Biden's still president? So how much confidence do we have in any of them to
Mhm.
give us the truth about who did what and who didn't, whose responsibility?
Mhm.
And much worse, is there, you do have speculation on the part of a number of individuals that have law enforcement or tactical or intelligence backgrounds, saying this must be an inside job. There
Mhm.
must have been somebody within the Secret Service involved in facilitating this attempt.
So what there seems like nothing that we can do if this guy is still in power. right? They
Right.
probably just don't tell you anything valued, or they probably just hold on
Yeah.
the investigation and tell you that we are we're investigating something, we cannot talk about that. And it can last for years if they're in power.
Well, it can. Now, the only hope that most people have to get to the truth is that by January of 2025, Joe Biden is not in charge of the government. Kamala Harris is not in charge. And we don't know who they're really going to, they haven't really shown their cards about the nomination.
Right.
So do you trust Obama and Hillary Clinton and all these people behind the scenes? Even though Nancy Pelosi has said she endorses Kamala Harris, what does that mean? What is any endorsement from those people who are habitual liars on a daily basis? So they say now they're going to endorse Kamala Harris. Yeah, right.
Who
Who
knows, huh?
believes that?
Right. So yeah, talk about Kamala Harris and talk about Biden. So people just asking from yesterday and just asking where Biden is. Where is
Well,
he?
Biden's been heard from because yesterday in the afternoon he called in to the rally they were having, Kamala Harris and the Democrats in Wilmington, and now supposedly he's going to return to the White House today. We'll see.
We'll see.
So
Okay.
far, when he was talking on the phone yesterday, most people were saying, "Well, that's him. It sounds like Biden. That's his voice. He's calling in live." So apparently he's not dead. And the other thing, the rumors about that maybe he died, maybe any of that, I just, that one I found to be just a little bit too much that you would have all these people that claimed to have talked to him since he returned to Washington from Las Vegas, that all these people said they talked to him. And, they all lie. Are they going to all get caught in the lie too? Maybe. But I think I think there was too little evidence that Biden had died,
Hmm.
or that he's terminally ill, which is the other rumor that he's. Well, we could see that he's in bad physical shape now for several years,
Hmm.
and all of these Democrats around him have lied about how good a condition is, and now all these people that like George Clooney and everybody, oh, they're jumping on the Kamala Harris bandwagon. We're going to give her money. She's going to be, you know, great. Well, we'll see. It's still a pretty long way from the convention in Chicago. We'll see what happens there. And we'll see how many Democrats deep down. You have all these what I would, second string Democrats immediately jumped on Kamala. They want to make sure they're on the ballot. They want to make sure they're getting support. But you have many other Democrats that have not endorsed her yet, including Obama. So it's a long way to go. We'll see. And it would not be unusual if they did endorse her, like Pelosi has supposedly endorsed her. Well, what is her word worth?
Hmm.
If she was endorsing you, would you be, oh, great, I've got her endorsement. I'm all set. No,
Hmm. Not
no,
really.
no, no. You would be waiting for when is she going to pull the rug out from underneath her? Today, tomorrow, at the convention, we'll see.
So how the convention is next month, right? So we have 1 month away.
Right.
Uh, so what your prediction of this one? Meaning that you're not totally convinced that Kamala Harris will be the candidate of Democrats.
No, because what's going to affect that is that you're going to have polling now between now and the convention where they're going to really try to take a look at can she really beat Trump? So then they'll make the same argument. They, the elite,
Mhm.
secretly will make the same argument that if she can't beat Trump, we need somebody who can. Well, the problem is anybody who might have a ghost of a chance will also be very unknown to the American public on a national basis.
Right.
So at least she's a national name. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's better in politics that everybody knows your name,
Hmm.
even if they think you're stupid and unqualified and no good, they still know you. And
Hmm.
so that's what she's hoping for with the Democrats. But I think right now with the Democratic elite, by elite I mean Obama, Hillary Clinton, a couple of others that you don't hear from every day. I think what they're really trying to see, and the reason for removing Biden from the ticket was can't win. I don't care if he's demented or senile or any of that. It was clear he no longer could defeat Trump. So
Mhm.
now the question is, can Kamala Harris defeat Trump? Can she
No.
come close with enough money, with enough backing, with enough campaigning, give speeches all over the country, cackling her way across every major city? Is that going to be enough to get her competitive with Trump? And as the Trump campaign have said, and I think rightfully so, they're not running against a person. They aren't running against Biden. They aren't running against Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or Michelle. They're running against the failed policies of the Democratic Party, which won't change.
Mhm.
Kamala Harris is not going to come in and change anything that they've been doing together, starting with the border,
Mhm.
starting with inflation, starting with drilling for energy and oil and the New Deal and wanting windmills and all of that kind of stuff. That's not going to change with Kamala Harris. So
No.
the Trump campaign is going to have the same platform and the same objective is to take them out based on their failed policies. What are
Mhm.
they running on? The same policies that failed for the last 4 years? Is that going to be their current policy, their current platform? That's the other thing is they're going to have to vote for a platform in Chicago and say, this is what we stand for. Now, right now, the one thing we know they stand for is that every woman should be able to get an abortion all the way up to the last day. That's number one. Now, does the whole country want that? Is that successful? That's one thing. But the
Mhm.
policies on energy, the policies on the border,
Mhm.
immigration, those kind of issues, law and order, crime in the streets of our big cities, those policies, are they going to be in the same policies?
Mhm.
So to me, if they are, which I expect, if it's Kamala, how is she going to deny when she's supported those policies for the last 3+ years? How is she going to deny that she's not going to continue to use those policies? Because on paper, she's always been more liberal and radical than Biden.
Of course, she
Now,
is.
the other problem is an immense problem for the Democrats is that for her to pivot, for her to campaign, for all of that, she's going to have to at least, she's going to have to fool the public too. Biden's been fooling the Democratic Party that he's able and he's bright and all of that, which was all a lie. Now it's exposed. But she's going to have to predict the Democratic voters that she's actually intelligent because she sure doesn't show it. She doesn't sound it. The only
Mhm.
thing you hear out of her speeches is that stupid cackle that she keeps doing. And
She's-
that does not make her look
No,
intelligent, does
no.
not make her look competent or capable or
Mhm.
on the same page as the rest of the country. So she
Mhm.
can stand up the podium and act like a 10-year-old girl, but that's not going to get them past the finish line. And I think that if they want to push her as the candidate, they can give millions and millions of dollars. They're going to have a hard time against Trump and now JD Vance. Those are two formidable people. Even
Mhm.
Vance, when you
Mhm.
look at his background and the possibility of JD debating her or Trump debating her, boy, that when she goes in for the debate, they're going to chew her up and spit her out.
I can see that. I can see that.
So now, well, you, me, and the rest of the Democrats will see that. Now, what do? When they get an indication between now and August that she can't win because she's not a good campaigner, she's not intelligent on her feet in
Mhm.
front of an audience, all in front of an interviewer that's halfway decent.
Mhm.
So the idea that she's going to be front and center the next 3, 4 weeks, this is perfect. This is what the Democrats want. They want to see her
Mhm.
basically auditioning as their candidate to defeat Trump.
Mhm.
And if they don't see that, and the down ballot Democrats don't see that, the
Mhm.
Congress, the candidates for Congress, for the Senate, for other offices, if they think she can't help them on the ticket and they won't get reelected in the case of the House,
Mhm.
or the third of the Senate that's running for reelection, If they think she can't help her, then you're going to see them turn on her and spit her out.
Mhm.
So it'll be very interesting to see her auditioning for the nomination. She's not the nominee yet, even though Biden says, oh, I'm going to, Biden in his telephone call, I'm going to campaign for you very hard. He couldn't campaign for himself. So
Hey.
how's he going to campaign for her? And if he does, that's great because he'll make a continuing to make a fool of himself and
Mhm.
show his ineptitude. And therefore, if he's backing her, then her ineptitude. The two of them are quite a team. They've been taking the Democratic Party downhill now for over 3 years. And I don't see that changing, whether it's Biden or Kamala or whoever's the head of that ticket. I think they're both losers.
So we'll keep continue to watch this show. It's
You
a
know,
show.
she,
Yeah.
yeah, she's never gotten a vote.
Right.
She ran for president. She dropped out before even getting a single vote.
Right. Right.
And so we're going to see what is she going to do to prove to the 14 million people that voted for Biden in the primaries that she's going to be the perfect substitute now for them to back her up.
Right. Well, you know what, Tom? Thank you so much for telling us the details about the background and about some stories that we cannot see from the service. But I had heard a rumor that Hillary Clinton probably will run for the Democrats. Do you think it's possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
She's been out there for how many years saying that the Russians and Trump stole the election in 2016 from her. But
Mm-hmm.
if anybody else says that, like Trump, oh my God, they're evil. How can they say that? We shouldn't put up with that. She's been saying it all along. She's never said it's because she was a bad candidate, which she was. Now,
Mm-hmm.
part of the problem in 2016 is most people didn't like her. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people didn't trust her. And
Mm-hmm.
then her own husband, Bill Clinton, who you know, whatever else you think of him, he's a pretty smart politician.
Mm-hmm.
And he was advising her campaign in
Mhm,
2016 in August, September, October,
mhm,
telling her, you've got to go to the Rust Belt states, Wisconsin,
mhm,
Michigan, Ohio,
mhm,
Pennsylvania. You've
mhm,
got to go there and campaign. And she was arrogant and saying, no, the polls show I'm up by 6, 8, 10 points. I'm going to win. I don't need to waste my time going there.
mhm,
And then she ends up, that's how she lost. And so, Bill Clinton behind the scenes saying, I told her, you
mhm,
know, I told you so, but she's too stubborn to listen to her own husband and whatever else she might have thought of her husband.
mhm,
Uh, at least as a politician, she should have had a pretty fair sense of his ability as a politician, and that when he was advising her, go to those states, no reason not to go, she
mhm,
didn't go.
mhm,
So, so she ends up losing. She lost her own election
mhm,
on
right.
the campaign trail by not being likable, then
Mhm,
by trying to cheat, then start this Russiagate hoax, which she started. So all of the evil things that she did. And then what happens is she gets away with it.
mhm,
Now, maybe Trump's mistake was instead of just saying, well, she's out, she's gone, she's no longer a threat, well, she's still evil. And
she's
she's
so
still out there with her big mouth.
right.
So they should have prosecuted her
Mhm,
and gone after Comey for saying, "Oh, no reasonable prosecutor," and dozens of reasonable prosecutors said, "I'd prosecute her in a heartbeat for all
mhm,
the things that she did, destroying the evidence when they subpoenaed the 33,000 emails, some of
mhm,
the other stuff, the fraud that was committed with the Clinton Foundation. They just stopped that investigation. In many ways, she was brilliant.
mhm,
Broke the glass ceiling. She's the first woman to run an international organized crime group,
mhm,
period. The
mhm,
Clinton Foundation was a fraud in progress every day, taking money from oligarchs, foreign governments, and all of that in exchange for access to her. Now, in a way, that's what Biden did on a smaller scale. He didn't make $100 million and
mhm,
then use the money to live off of like the Clintons did. But he did make, probably $50 million combined from Ukraine, Romania, uh, China. So he made a lot of illegal money, uh, but he wasn't in the same league as Hillary was.
Sometimes I just wonder, Tom, how Hillary Clinton becomes so evil. She grew up in a normal family and she has very good education. But how
Yeah,
come
she grew up about 40 miles from where I grew up. She was
oh,
in the western Chicago suburbs,
right,
Wheaton, Illinois. I was in the southern Chicago suburbs.
very
So we
close?
were very close in growing up. But I
Hmm.
think that, and she started out a Republican. You remember, she worked for Goldwater. And
Hmm.
so later, then she switches over to the Democratic Party and, then starts all of her trickery basically as a Democrat. So,
Oh,
there's no accounting for how do these people sell their souls?
right.
That being elected, being in a high office is more important than their own integrity, than their own reputation. They don't care. They just want the power. She's a good example of that. Joe Biden's a good example of that. Gavin Newsom in California is a good example. They're all good examples. Obama, good examples of just give us the power.
Hmm.
Trust us. We'll take care of you. Well, they have.
Sounds so communist.
Yeah,
Is
the Marxist playbook is absolutely in use.
hmm.
That's their game plan. We've had Marxism in this country. Karl Marx writes the Communist Manifesto in the middle of the 19th century.
Hmm.
But by the early 20th century, he has a lot of followers in the United States, uh, including members of the Woodrow Wilson, administration.
Hmm.
And then you have Wilson. Here's a guy. He has a stroke about 15 months before the end of his presidency, and his wife takes over. And so he's in the White House in bed. She won't let cabinet members see him. She says, give me the reports. I'll relay it to him. She doesn't let anybody else have a chance. And this is, of course, before television. So, you don't have the chance to interview him on camera or any of that. But
Hmm.
she runs the country for a year and a half. So,
So the Democrats have the history. They have the history to cheating people, to cheat.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so then what do you think about her chance to defeat Trump? I'm sorry, Hillary Clinton, if she becomes a nominee, and do you think she can beat Trump?
I don't. And I
Me-
think that, I think most people within the uh, Democratic Party know how unpopular she is, that the general public doesn't like her. They
Mhm.
don't trust her, all of those things. And no matter what she comes out and says,
Mhm.
I think they're going to be able to take her apart as a candidate
Mhm.
and go back to the 33,000 emails and go back to
Right.
her campaign people, their law firm gave the documents to the FBI to create the Russia hoax investigation. So that'll all come out. All these things will come out that basically prove how evil she actually is deep down.
Great.
And I think most people are going to see that very much. That she has no likability at
Mhm.
all.
Right. So it seems to us it's very obvious that Democrats cannot beat Trump, no matter who is the candidates for this year, for sure. Uh, Trump is so popular.
Well,
People.
you would think legally,
Mhm.
if they do the elections properly, they probably cannot.
Mhm.
But they've already, many of the mechanisms they used to cheat in 2020 are
Mhm.
not corrected. So you're
Right.
still going to have many of those things still come up
Mhm.
this time. The,
Mhm.
the early voting, the fraudulent ballot. Now, the one thing, I had heard that they'd already cheating had printed something like 100 million ballots with Joe Biden's name.
Right. Right.
So now they got to go back and reprint and redistribute and do all that. So they're still going to have challenges
Mhm.
to cheat, but it doesn't mean they won't try.
Right. They
And I
that.
think that the goal of the Republican Party is to try to stop that, try to monitor the polling places, keep an eye on the counting of the votes and who's counting and when they're counting, keep an eye on whether at midnight they bring in duffel bags full of ballots that have whoever's name, whether it's Hillary or Kamala, whoever. But
Mhm.
they're going to have a challenge, especially trying to come up with these ballots before election day. Now
Right.
they'll have 2 months. Now, usually, in the past, these party, nomination process would happen a little bit later. And
Mhm.
so you would have, they always in the past talked about the real campaign starts Labor Day, the beginning of September.
Mhm.
And now already somewhat in progress, even though the Democrats now are in a little bit of confusion, who's going to actually be the nominee. And it's going to remain to be seen if the main body of Democrats in Chicago are going to want Kamala Harris or not. And like I said, I don't think they know yet because they're going to be waiting to see this massive campaign. Everybody and their uncle, George Clooney and Pelosi and you name it, all saying Kamala's great. I'm behind her. I'm going to donate tens of millions of dollars to her campaign, all of that. Um, we'll see if she is just as popular with them
Mhm.
in a month. When the Chicago convention starts, is she still top of mind for them to select as the nominee? Maybe, but I'm not 100% convinced.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because don't forget, she has to go out and start campaigning now, what she's going to do.
Mhm. Right.
And when she goes to these campaign events and opens her mouth, for every 2 or 3 votes she gets, she's probably going to lose one or two, just based on how stupid she sounds when she talks. And
Right.
that stupid cackle laugh of hers that makes her look not serious, makes her
Mhm.
look like she has a mental problem.
Yeah.
So I think that nothing is for sure with the Democrats right now with regard to Kamala Harris or anybody else that they want to promote.
Mhm. So it seems like there's only two things, two major things that the Democrats want to do. One is to try to steal the election as what they did on 2020, but in a big and bigger scale. So they will do the rigged election again for sure. So they have to prepare for that. This is one thing they need to do. The second thing is they will try to kill Trump again. Only the two things can guarantee they can still stay in White House, stay in power. They want to,
The
right?
issue, the issue with both of those is, can they succeed? Can they succeed in the cheating and the vote counting and all of that? Now, some of the things that have really helped the Republicans, I think,
Mhm.
is getting rid of that Ronna McDonald, getting the new leaders of the RNC,
Right.
including Lara Trump and then, her partner. And I think that they're dedicated to trying everything they can to help keep the election honest, to help. And not only that, but the strategy standpoint. Don't forget, even Trump previously said only vote on election day.
Hmm.
And that backfired in his face.
Hmm.
Because if you look at Georgia, one of the top candidates for the Senate was Herschel Walker,
Hmm.
very popular and all of that. Well, Herschel Walker, the early voting in Georgia on election day, when people go to the polls to vote for Herschel Walker, he's already losing by millions of votes. They couldn't overcome it.
Hmm.
And then you can't overcome what if there's bad weather? What if there's tornadoes or hurricanes or whatever, and people can't go to the polls that day? So anyway, at least they've come around and said, no, no, no. When the voting starts, vote.
Hmm.
Go in and vote so that we're not losing by millions of votes on election day. We're not waiting. And a good example of how that backfired. Carrie Lake. She's running in Arizona, and it turns out that only the voting machines in the Republican districts failed, and they couldn't fix them. And she loses. She had no business losing. If they had early voting in Arizona, she would have been so far ahead she couldn't have come close to losing. So
Right.
that backfired. So I think the current leadership of the Republican National Committee have learned the lessons of their predecessors of don't listen to this, even Trump saying only vote on election day. No, start voting. As soon as you can, vote. And
Mhm.
then go to your neighbors, go to everybody else and get them to vote. And
Mhm.
so we'll see how much of a difference that makes here in November.
We'll see. And the second thing, or the same important thing they want to do is try to kill Trump again, just like you said. So, as a professional, what is your suggestion for protecting Trump for the
Well,
security?
first of all, put very competent people in charge of protecting him. We
Mhm.
don't know, based on what's going on now in the investigation of the attempt to assassinate him, one of the absolutely most important positions, and I've talked about this before because I had this position at many major events, is the on-scene commander. Who is the commander? That
Mhm.
day at the venue. Now, the commander would come in several days before. They would have meetings. They would identify every law enforcement officer that's going to be involved from all the counties, cities,
Mhm.
Pennsylvania State Police, other federal agencies.
Mhm.
Identify them, identify which of their bosses will be in the command post or accessible to the commander so that they can immediately check on personnel. And like in this case, you heard that the Secret Service snipers on the other roof were radioing in, who's this guy
Mhm.
on the
Right,
roof with the
right.
gun? Well, we'll get back to it. Well, right, I could just picture in the command post calling the head of the state police, the head of the county, that county, this city, that city, other agencies. Is he with you? No. Is he yours? No. Anybody know? No. And so during that 3 or 4 minutes, they got no answer. And then what happens is when the shooter shoots, then they kill him. Well, it's
Right,
too late. That shot came, how close to killing Trump.
right.
And that's what it took. While they're still playing around, who is this guy? Trump almost gets killed.
Mhm.
So that's an enormous question of what that happened. And I talked about if I was the on scene commander and they're radioing me, what should we do? You would be thinking about if they give the order, take them out,
Mhm.
that, and they kill the guy on the roof. What if he's a deputy from some
Right.
podunk county with 5 kids and, hero and all of this, and they just killed him?
Mhm.
So that's a difficult decision. It's a difficult command decision, and
Mhm.
it's a difficult decision. Now, once Crooks opens fire, boom, kill him. They do. That's no problem.
Mhm.
But up until that point, they don't know who he is. And that's a huge problem to deconflict good guys from bad guys. That's what
Mhm.
they're trying to figure out.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
years ago, the FBI learned when you're going to do a raid that involves hundreds of police officers who typically don't know each other, and you're doing multiple sites at the same time, that's when they came up with the blue windbreaker jackets with the
Mhm.
orange letters on the back FBI. And then
Mhm.
the other agencies adopted that idea, DEA. Interestingly, when Homeland Security was created
Mhm.
and they did their windbreakers, their lead investigative agency is Homeland Security Investigations.
Mhm.
They had the windbreakers HSI.
Mhm. Nobody.
Cops were saying, who the hell's that?
Mhm. Right.
Who are these guys? So
Mhm.
then they went to, if there was any doubt that people would have about whether you're a good guy, bad guy, just put police on the back.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you'd have FBI, DEA, marshals, maybe ATF, police for everybody else.
Right.
And so now you have local police,
Mhm.
state police that are at this event in many cases, in their uniforms.
Right.
Well, the little patch on the shoulder or what, can you tell that from across the street? Can you tell that from a long way? Now, the on-scene commander should know where every good guy is supposed to be
Mhm.
assigned, including that roof should have been good guys on that roof, not the bad guy shooter.
Mhm.
So, but that was the ball of confusion that the Secret Service created by
Mhm.
not having that stuff figured out the day before or 2 days before the event.
Mhm. Yeah, I have a question, Tom, about the shooter. You said before about 4 minutes, and then the sniper already saw the shooter have the gun point to Trump, or at least the direction of Trump So
Well,
why?
in general, being on the roof with the gun in hand, he's still
Right.
150 yards away. How do you know if he's a cop or not?
Well, at least they can have the speech stop
That they
temporarily.
could, absolutely. That they could have. That's a major fault. Keep Trump away and go after this guy and identify him. Good guy,
Yeah,
bad guy.
right,
Now, that might have resulted in a shootout on the rooftop before the speech or whatever. Get that resolved, but
right,
make sure that the whole scene is safe before you let Trump go on stage.
right. So who made the decision? Because they already report. We saw
That decision typically would be made by the on-scene commander,
so who
who's
is
controlling well, we don't know. They've kept that a secret, but that commander would be a high-ranking official of the Secret Service because they're in charge of the venue
Mhm,
totally for miles, the whole perimeter, next long perimeter. But that person would have the decision making of does the speaker go to the podium or no? Keep him protected. Let's resolve this. Now, how many rallies has Trump done where he was an hour late
right,
over and over again?
right,
And
right,
the
right.
people don't know. They hear later, well, when the plane landed, he's meeting the local police and saying hi to them and thanking them and all of that. So they could have easily come up with the same excuse here. Trump
Mhm,
is, seclude him, protect him, and resolve the threat and make sure that this is the only person that's a threat and eliminate the threat one way or the other. If the kid surrenders, fine. If he doesn't, if he decides to try to shoot a police officer, whatever, take him out. Take him
right,
out of the threat picture. And
right,
then once they've resolved that, if they think there's no other threats around,
mhm,
then tell Trump, okay, now go to the podium.
right,
The public would have no idea unless the guy on the roof decides to shoot it out with the police and they have a big shootout and everything. The people in the audience might know then that there was a
right,
bad guy that had been eliminated, but that could be easily. They can go to the podium and said, okay, we had somebody pose a threat.
right,
That's over.
right.
Everything's safe now. Bring Trump out.
So can they just keep the name of the commander or
Well, the
can
FBI now would know who, normally I think that Secret Service probably wants to keep that name a secret because of the jeopardy it might put him in, her or him, whoever was in charge, for
Mhm,
being negligent, for just doing what you said, not holding Trump back or not making this decision or that decision.
mhm,
But there's been things coming out in the news, and we don't know for sure if it's real. It was reported this morning that the Secret Service did not attend the morning meeting the day of the event.
mhm,
Well, if that's true, that's terrible. But again, that would all come down to who is in charge. It
right.
wasn't Cheadle. She's not even in town.
No,
So
not
the
her.
on-scene, and I've been the on-scene commander. When you're
Right.
the on-scene commander, you're making the decisions. You're not calling Washington. You're
Mhm,
not calling your director
right,
or other leaders. You are commander. That
right.
means you are the boss.
Mhm,
So you're deciding what happens next, who does what.
mhm,
And, that's what the investigation is supposed to determine all that. Can we trust the FBI investigation? I don't.
I don't.
I don't. Because so many times now they've, they've obscured the true facts, or they said, oh, that's a pending investigation. We can't talk about that. Well, in this case, you can talk about it
Right,
because you want the people to be confident when they go to the next rally. And
right.
we're going to have rallies from now till November.
Mhm.
So
The
are we going
next,
to trust who's theoretically, Secret Service could put the same person in charge of the next rally.
right.
And the excuse that
Exactly.
they didn't, how few Secret Service officers there were in
Mhm,
Pennsylvania,
mhm,
in the Bureau, we didn't hesitate to move hundreds of agents cross country when they were needed at a particular place or for a particular investigation.
mhm,
We had a federal judge in 1979 assassinated in San Antonio, Texas, Judge Woods. The
mhm,
FBI, I was, just not quite in the FBI at the time. My first day was in September. This was in May. The FBI sent about 1,000 agents to Texas to investigate that case, and they solved it and eventually convicted the person responsible for it.
Mhm.
So, we would refer that in the Bureau as a Bureau special. So you
Mhm.
could have a Bureau special where you sent agents from every office in the country, hundreds, thousands, or it could be an office special where everybody in a particular office had to be assigned to resolve that case unless they were running a major undercover operation or some other event that they had to stay on that case. And then if they didn't have enough people in the small field office, start bringing them in from around the country. So
Right.
that's nothing. It's nothing to move people like that. So for the Secret Service to use the excuse that, well, they didn't have enough people in Pennsylvania because they were covering Jill Biden and
Right.
they were covering, Carmela, wherever she was, Eastern Pennsylvania, and therefore Trump's last. He's the last person they're worried about protecting when they know that his life has been threatened for a long time, including recent threats that Iran wants to kill him because he killed Soleimani, their leading terrorist, when he was president. So you have all of these indications that there's no, of the 31 people Secret Service is responsible to protect right now,
Mhm.
Trump is probably the number one most threatened of
Right.
all of them, the
Right.
number one most in jeopardy, the number one most likely to get killed before he can go back to the White House. Most
Right.
likely.
Right.
So
Right.
everything they should do at these events should be to pretty much lock down every possible corner. And the different venues that he speaks at, this is one of the easier ones. Well,
Mhm.
indoors is even more easy, but for an outdoor venue, you have people, they were talking about the water tower, or they were talking about other locations hundreds of yards away. Well, a trained sniper could kill at 1,000 yards, you know.
Mhm.
So the idea that, well, that's pretty far away, they can't do that. When you have that rooftop was only 140 yards away from the podium, it's not a super easy shot, but it's not that hard for most good shooters.
Mhm.
So, the idea that Trump is still as vulnerable as ever
Mhm.
and maybe more vulnerable because now the people behind trying to get him killed,
Mhm.
and we don't know if anybody internally in the federal government, Secret Service, or any of those people contributed or not, were
Mhm.
part of the plot. We don't know. But the people that tried to kill him in Pennsylvania are going to be more determined than ever. And this time they'll assign people that are better positioned to do it. More shooters, maybe, other things. And don't forget, he we didn't see the security at the airport. He flies in
Right.
to that location. Now he's coming down the steps of his airplane,
Mhm.
Trump Force One. He's a complete, how far away is that perimeter? How many snipers are watching that he doesn't take a sniper shot coming down the stairs? Or
Mhm.
when he gets done and goes back up the stairs, they don't shoot him then. Or at the other end, when he lands, so you have basically from the time he gets out of bed in the morning
Mhm.
till he goes back to bed that night, he's in jeopardy every step of the way.
Mhm. That's
Now,
the.
how diligent are they in trying to control that? Who was in charge of this? Good question.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
would like to know the background of the on-scene commander
Mhm.
because you don't have the head of the Secret Service. He isn't even in town.
Right.
So that commander, again, I've been in that position. You
Mhm.
have tremendous power. It's
Mhm.
all up to you. You make the key decisions.
Right. Right. And if the service cannot, Secret Service cannot provide enough protection for Trump, can Trump has his own private security team? Of
Well,
course.
he could, but they wouldn't have the legal authority that Secret Service does at that venue. And again, there is no excuse for Secret Service. How many agents they have? If they have 3,000, put 1,000 on Trump.
Mhm.
Whatever they have, make it so secure and so difficult for anybody to have a shot at him. It's
Mhm.
not impossible. He's always going to be in danger, but make it as safe as you can.
Well, I don't think they will do that. Do you think they will do that?
That's a good question because they're
Yeah.
going to they're going to be under a lot of scrutiny now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't trust them at
And
all.
even Trump, I don't think even Trump will take for granted that they'll do what they're supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so we have so many again, so many audience to say hi to you, and then thank you to Tom. And then Yui said, let me see, Yui said government agency are getting bigger and bigger. The larger the network, the more loopholes for there are, allowing each other to pass the buck and cover each other from doing bad things. Well, she's just saying that the government agent is become bigger, but people just cannot trust them. They cover for each other. They cover up for each other.
I think the size of it isn't the issue. It's the integrity of who's running it.
Mm-hmm,
So it's who's in charge of the Secret Service, who's in charge, who are the people they select to be the commanders, because you're going to have these venues
mm-hmm,
probably once a week from now till November, or
mm-hmm.
twice a week. When it gets closer to the election in late October, Trump's going to be doing 2, 3 rallies a day.
Well,
So
yeah, I
yeah.
know.
So you're going to need qualified, competent Secret Service commanders and the rest of the specialists, the snipers, the investigators, all of that. But
Mm-hmm,
you're going to need, a very competent group at
mm-hmm,
all these different places.
mm-hmm,
So, the Secret Service, and what's always happened in the past and will happen here would be the agents that are investigating counterfeit money or other financial cases would get brought in to be on part of the protection, part of the advanced teams, and all. They would be trained to do all of that.
mm-hmm,
So realistically, you wouldn't have just a few hundred agents doing protection, you'd have a few thousand.
mm-hmm,
And, that's what should take place here at these venues from here on.
mm-hmm.
Because I don't think Trump's going to stop doing these venues. And people are going to continue to go to the
I
venue, to the rallies.
we have a audience, and he or she just said, Faye, she said, just don't do the rally. It's too dangerous. Asking for um President Trump. He will keep doing the rallies.
He will keep doing it. He's not going to be in
Yeah.
a position where they call him a coward or he's afraid to do a rally or he's not going to do. And don't forget, you have tens of thousands of people that would love to see him in person. So when
Hmm.
they go to the rally, hear his speech, hear all the other speakers. And by the way, part of the purpose of these rallies isn't just Trump goes to promote Trump.
Hmm.
Trump introduces every Senate candidate that he's endorsing, the congressman, everybody down to the dog catcher. He
Right.
introduces to the audience, the hometown audience, home
Hmm.
state audience.
Hmm.
So that's important to them. So
Right.
they want their president coming to back them up. They didn't get that out of Biden.
Hmm. Of
I don't know
course.
what they'll get out of Kamala or if they even want her.
Mhm.
We'll see how popular she is in the weeks ahead. They may not want her to show up.
Right. So we'll see who gonna be the new director of Secret Service, because Kimberly's resigned already. And we hope that they will have enough protection for President Trump, which I doubt they will do. And we wish that Trump can have the private team to protect him. I don't know what he will do or what he will increase the private protection part.
The
But
problem, the problem with a private team is that you have the Secret Service responsible. They're out there and they're running the entire event. Then they bring in as many police officers, the state police, the county, different police officers like that to help them, still under the command of the Secret Service. So the idea is that they would not want Trump to have his own extended security people with sniper rifles and all. They're not going to want that, nor would Trump want that, nor would the police, the honest police, really want that. Now,
mhm,
one of the things I talked about, previous podcast was that you have the idea of this kid climbs up on the roof.
mhm,
Nobody knows who he is. The
mhm,
Secret Service snipers, 100 yards away, whatever they were, on the other rooftop, are radioing in. Who is this guy? What do we do?
Mhm.
And they don't get an answer
Right.
because whoever the on-scene commander is probably doesn't know, doesn't even know who to ask. Is he
Mhm.
with you? Is he your department? Is he? And then what happens is, and needs to be stopped, is that you would have all these little county sheriff's office
Mhm.
where the sheriff is thinking, I'm running for reelection November. I want the public to know that my deputy was in the middle of this. So I'm going to send my deputy out there and tell him, climb on a roof, get up there, whatever,
Mhm.
to try to get glory for his or her sheriff.
Mhm.
And that's part of the problem is that nobody knows who that person is, but that sheriff later can show the picture and say, that was my deputy that
Mhm.
say, that was there to protect the president. Vote
Mhm.
for me. And that adds to the problem is that people need to be included where possible and excluded where possible and identified in the middle. You're
Mhm.
always going to have unknown subjects show up, pretend to be police, pretend to be something that aren't.
Right.
So that's going to always be a problem. So in this case, like we've talked about, don't let Trump go up on the stage until you figure out who is this kid.
Right. Right. And also, one last question is a technique question. I heard that we have different team on the scene, just like you said, maybe we have 20 or 25 different teams, different groups from different police station.
Right.
And people just saying that when they communicate in the event, they use different channel, meaning,
Exactly. What you do in that situation, the on-scene commander in the meetings that they would have had 2, 3 days ahead of the event, and then
mhm,
the morning of the event is determine how everybody can communicate with everybody else,
right,
especially with the commander and the command post, if
right,
not directly to a subordinate, right there in the command post. So
right,
normally what you would do is if you're going to have teams that are in key positions like counter sniper teams, you make sure you have a Secret Service officer with them
mhm,
who does have communication directly to the command post
mhm,
so that they can say, directly back and forth. The idea that you did not have immediate communication from the officers on the scene or down in the field to the commander is absurd. That's an absolute failure of command on the
mhm,
part of, again, who the on-scene commander is.
right,
We have more than one person that needs to be eliminated from Secret Service. And I think besides Cheadle would be who was running this operation so terribly,
right,
so incompetently.
right. So that means that people on the scene, the police officers should stay in one channel, right? Not separate channel, different
Now,
channel.
there's multiple channels. The snipers have a channel, the observers, the
Oh,
surveillance people, the investigators that check out, but
okay.
they're all in a position with somebody with them that can communicate to
Right.
the
To
command
each
post. So the on-scene commander, there might be 6 or 8 radio channels
other.
at you simultaneously.
Hmm.
And you would have people monitoring every channel and be able to say. So
Hmm.
one of them could say to the commander, hey, this cop down in the field is saying there's a guy on the roof with a gun.
Hmm.
So that goes to that person, and that person relays it to the commander, but it's instantly knowledgeable of who's radioing what in.
I see.
It's
So,
not a mystery. It's not as mysterious as it sounds. And this
mhm,
has been set up so many times that you can set this up and be like a well-oiled machine to have these communications issues resolved, logistics issues resolved, perimeter issues resolved. That all has to be resolved ahead of time.
mhm,
And then the commander can make decisions on the fly at the time if
right,
necessary.
right. Well, thank you so much, Tom, to give us so much details and the inside information. It's so important. That right now we know that the commander is a very, very, very the most important person at that day. So we need to know who this guy or this lady is, and is he still in the service, or he or she resigned as well? Because it's a huge, huge failure for her or for him. So we need to know that who they are, who he or she is. But I don't know if we can get the answer pretty fast. Maybe they
I
just
don't know either, but you
so.
know, this event, the attempted murder of the president's a federal crime
Mhm,
under the investigation of the FBI, lead investigator. And so if the FBI doesn't resolve this between now and January when we have a new president, then the upper echelon of the FBI needs to be fired,
yeah.
new director put in, new investigators, because the statute of limitations on trying to kill the president or a candidate or Secret Service protectee, that is not going to run out between
Mhm,
now and January of 2025. So there is no reason that this
mhm.
case has to be closed or
Like,
somehow
right,
manipulated
right,
at all.
right. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and
Hopefully.
the other thing is, you look at Trump and he's going to, have to come up with a new attorney general and new director of the FBI and all that. Those will still take a couple months to resolve. And Trump might be trying to, extend a peace,
Mhm,
whatever, an olive branch to the other side, like he did with Hillary.
right.
Hillary should have been prosecuted when he came into office in January of 2017. Hillary was still running around, opening her mouth, secretly conniving with the FBI to open the Russia hoax investigation and all of that. He should have made sure she got prosecuted.
Right.
And I think that, and you had during the campaign, when he was doing the rallies and talked about that, people were in the audience saying,
Right.
lock
Right.
her up.
Right.
And the problem is they didn't.
Mhm.
And she should have been. That's the problem. That serious of a crime as she committed to obstruct justice, to not honor the subpoenas, to
Mhm.
try to obstruct with the Russia hoax case, all of those things, she should have been prosecuted then. And now she's out there now with her big mouth even today. So
So
we'll
this is the lesson to learn.
lesson.
When you need to do something, just do it.
Yeah,
Mercy is good, but mercy cannot solve everything. So
right.
yeah, this is a war. We need to be like as strong as possible.
Agree.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again, Tom, for the interview and for the information that you gave us. And we pray for Mr. Trump for his safety. And we'll see what's gonna happen for next week.
Right.
We have some new things every single day, every single week. And then I'll see you next week.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.